Hi, everyone, and welcome to the American Institute of Architects, New York State program on cooling the burn and burnout. I am Jeff Pulowski. I'm going to be the moderator tonight, and just a few housekeeping things before we really get into the meat of the program. Tonight's program is worth 2 learning units. There's going to be a few slides that show the usual disclaimers for continuing education, so please read through those. If you are having a viewing party, please be sure to fill out the credit forms and email back to Cara Longobardi. Her email will be up at the end of the presentation, but make sure that if you're looking for those credits that you do send that back to her. On your screen, you should see a participate button. If you click on that button, you can submit questions for the panel to weigh in on and answer. So we encourage you guys to please submit those questions to us. If we do have anyone from our neighboring states of Pennsylvania and New Jersey logged in tonight, welcome, and we're happy to have you. So before we get into it, I'd like to introduce the panel. Again, my name is Jeff Pulowski. I am an architect in Syracuse, New York at King & King Architects. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2004 with my Bachelor's of Architecture and have been working primarily in healthcare design for the last 11 years. Our next panel member is Jim King, AIA. Jim?
Thanks, Jeff. Jim King, partner at King & King Architects, Syracuse, New York. I guess I could say I've been around before dirt was invented. Graduated from Syracuse University a few decades back. Have been a partner at King & King for multiple decades here, about almost 30 some odd years. And most of my career actually has been in the field of K-12 education.
Next we have Kim Perron, CLC.
Hi, I'm Kim Perron. I'm a success coach and mindfulness trainer. My original field was communication, so for 20 years I was in communication. I adapted my career into coaching 4 years ago, and I run a company called the Center 4C, which is the Center for Clarity, Compassion, and Contentment, because I know we all need more of that, right? So my target clients are very much like your viewers, which are busy business professionals looking for life balance, success in their careers, and really living their best life.
Great.
Thank you.
Welcome. Next we have Daniel Wilson, AIA.
Yeah, my name is Dan Wilson. I'm a principal at Lacey Thaler Riley Wilson Architecture and Preservation here in Albany, New York. We're a firm that specializes in historic preservation and adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So, though I'm not as old as Jim, I'm younger than most of these people here, so I've been practicing architecture for over 25 years. And as I mentioned, I'm a principal at Lacey Thaler Riley Wilson. And one of the jobs I have is the HR management of our firm. So this is important for me to impart what I've learned from an HR standpoint.
Great. Welcome. And finally, we have Alex Messina.
Hi there. I am a senior project designer at Lacey Thaler Riley Wilson. And I graduated from the University of Hartford with a Bachelor's of Science, and I've been in the field for 4 years now. Not as many years as these guys.
Great. Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and to offer your insight. Tonight, we're really going to dive into the topic of cooling the burn and burnout. So the World Health Organization announced this year, actually, that burnout is now included in the 11th revision to the International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon. So symptoms of burnout include feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job or feeling of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. As emerging professionals struggling to create a work-life balance, burnout becomes very real. I would even argue that it becomes, for every professional, maintaining that work-life balance. So being proactive will create a more effective leader at work, at home, and in the community. So this program will focus on really the following topics as we dive into a few scenarios where everyone will weigh in on their insights. So what are strategies for carving time for yourself? looking at time management skills, resources for self-preservation and self-growth, tools to help you recognize that you are struggling, and how to broach the topic with yourself, your peers, and importantly, your firm leadership. So with that said, how we're going to work this tonight, we have 3 scenarios that we're going to go through. And then I will set up the scenario, and then our panel will offer kind of different perspectives within the firm, emerging professional, personal life, and of course from our coaching standpoint. So the first scenario, Tom is an employee in an 8-person firm. He was licensed 5 years ago and has been working 60 to 70 hours a week. Recently, Tom became a single parent and is finding he not only has no time for himself to do anything, but he doesn't have quality time to be with his child. The principal at Tom's firm has always been positive about his work, and Tom wants to continue his success for his family, his firm, and himself. Tom doesn't want to leave the firm, but knows something has to give. So some may notice that he is overwhelmed by the amount of work he's able to complete or lack thereof. So Kim, what are your thoughts as a professional coach?
Well, I'd say if I was coaching with Tom or even the firm, one, he shouldn't suffer in silence. So I would hope that he would reach out to whoever's managing the HR at the firm, or a partner, and it's probably one and the same in many cases. I would encourage him to be honest about his struggle. You had mentioned he's a good, valued employee, and employers want to keep good, valuable employees. So he's gone through a life change, so it's very important that he can share that with his management. And for him to not panic, it doesn't mean that he won't be as effective forever. And the interesting thing is, he may, in his stressed state or burned out state, might be thinking he needs to make more drastic decisions than he does. Time management, I'd work with him on time management. There might be efficiencies we could find. There are energy wasters, and one of which is actually he's experienced a lot of negativity. I'm sure the divorce or becoming a single parent, whatever caused him to become a single parent, was very stressful. So some of that negativity, he might be dealing with that negativity and the energy drain of that in and of itself, which may even be slowing down his work and causing him to work more hours. So getting the mindset right, talking to him about those efficiencies and where he's at and the struggle, and him not feeling like he's alone, we can return some energy to him, create some more positivity for him, so that you can make thoughtful decisions about where he should go from there. Mindfulness is key. I bet his mind is not at work and he's not in the present moment. So I'd like to add that a lot of times when we're at work, our mind's at home, our mind's at work, and then our mind is everywhere else, and that wastes a lot of energy. So teaching him mindfulness and how to be in the present moment and feel okay. It's the definition of mindfulness is being present in the current moment without judging it, right? Observing the present moment non-judgmentally. So if you imagine if you've gone through a struggle or a big life change, there is a lot of negativity and judgment minute to minute. So we can find a lot more energy for him and efficiency for him when he learns some of that and puts those tools in action.
What is the rest of the panel's thoughts?
I can certainly start. One of the things I thought about when I read this scenario was, even though it's a small firm, planning ahead. I mean, if Tom had conversations early with either his manager or one of the partners that was handling HR and talked to them about the fact that he was facing sometime in the near future a life change, and they came up with some sort of a plan that would help both the firm and Tom, particularly as I see it, he's a valued employee, and certainly a small firm does not want to lose somebody like Tom to a life-changing event. So I think I'd start with that, is hopefully there was some advanced discussion, or if you're in this scenario heading toward a life-changing event, start that conversation early with your management.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would like to start off, though, and maybe I'm completely off base. I'm just feeling, contrary to the industry standard, I just find it that people shouldn't be working consistently 60, 70 hours a week if it's well managed. Occasionally in our field, we do have to do, to meet deadlines, we have to put in overtime. But in many scenarios, I know many people are constantly doing the 60 to 70 hour weeks. I'm just not so sure that that is really necessary. In our office, we really don't do that consistently because we try to manage and we try to get a good work-life balance. One of the things I would continue on is, let's say, talk to your HR or management sooner than later before your work starts dropping off. Now, not everyone's going to be acceptable of saying and working with you because you have a life-changing event, but we all go through that. We've all going to have these life-changing events. And the first thing to do is to reach out to either the HR manager or your direct supervisor. And also you need to determine what kind of confidentiality they have. I know in our office, when someone talks to me, they can share as much as they want to share with me, but it's completely confidential. And then when I'm talking to the partners about scheduling, I am also giving them enough information to know the situation, but not telling them everything. So, and you have to be upfront. Some suggestions that could happen, flexible work hours. You're still putting in the same amount of time, but maybe it's not 8 to 5, maybe it's 10 to 7 to work around whatever scheduling issues he has. And maybe some remote workplace where, you set them up so they can work at home at some point. And the other thing is, that I always like to stress, is vacation time. What we say in our office many times to people, because we actually have trouble getting people to take vacation time, that vacation time is there to recharge your brain. And we want people to go on vacation. And what we mean by vacation is literally go on vacation, not be answering emails and doing drawings in their hotel room. So that's an important thing to do too. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I mean, if he doesn't feel that encouraged to speak to his HR, maybe someone like me, I could pick up on his cues at the office and see that he's having a hard time. Maybe those big exhales coming from that computer. I'm like, all right, something's going on. Maybe I can say, hey, do you need some help on anything? What can I do for you? My workload is a little light. What do you have that I can help you out with? So I think maybe that's from my perspective as an emerging professional.
And one thing we have in our office, we actually have an office pool. I mean, the partners have separate offices for privacy reasons, but we purposely want everyone to kind of be in this pool. And I know that it's so that they can talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I didn't mention was delegating. And maybe if you just can't handle something, find other people or work with scheduling people to delegate the tasks.
Yep.
Yeah, it's in a person in Tom's position. I think he has to be comfortable going to either the HR person or the partner or his direct supervisor, which may be another challenge. But as Alex says, maybe he's comfortable talking to one of his peers or one of the other folks in the office. Or, to your point, is you picked up on a signal that maybe he's struggling in some way, and you can help him out, by taking some of his work. And he may need some training in terms of, despite the fact that he's been at it for a while, he may need some training in terms of delegating, trusting others, and being able to hand off some of his work and allow others to help him out, particularly when he's in this type of a scenario. I also agree with Dan, is hopefully the 60 to 70 hours on a regular basis is not real for a very long time. I mean, I agree. Deadlines, client expectations, putting out a fire if something comes up on a construction site or those kind of things, sure. But in this type of scenario, I think, that's going to be asking a little bit much for a long haul. And I'm a little bit different personality, I think, than Dan. I agree that trying to get people to take time off is a challenge at our level, because I'm sure that all the folks in your firm they're committed to their jobs, they're committed to their clients. They feel like which is a great thing. It's awesome to have people that are committed to the business, committed to their clients, dealing with those deadlines. But if they don't take that time to refresh and relax and get away, then it's very difficult. You know, they're going to end up in that scenario where they can't give anything up. They can't delegate. They can't grow.
And I will say, we do have staff in our office that they're just going to work those hours because they're just those type of people.
Might be the personality.
And you gotta be able to work with
It could be a behavior.
Yeah.
So that's one thing too for Tom. You know, I could get a sense. You know, maybe it's just what he had been accustomed to doing
Right.
when he was newer, before he had a family, and so now is the time to change some of those behaviors. And the super long hour weeks are not really sustainable. So you either have a crisis that interrupts it and teaches you how to be more efficient, or the overwork becomes its crisis in and of itself, hence the burnout itself from even just the work. So.
And the nuclear option in all this, because I know there are still many firms out there that they will pay you a high salary, but they are expecting 60 to 70 hours a week. If they're not accommodating, he might have to look for a firm that has a better work-life balance. And that is one of the things that I know we market, that, you know, we will try to work with you to have a better work-life balance. Because it has to be a two-way street. You know, he can't do all the work on his end to manage his workload. It has to, the firm has to work with them too.
It's a compassionate workplace.
Right.
Sorry, I was going to say, because even the compassionate peers helping out, reshuffling of staff responsibilities where necessary is a compassionate workplace. Your
peers will then use that
against you.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, so
it's not
it has to do with your work environment too. Yeah.
Right.
So.
True.
I think one of the other interesting things, Dan, that you said that I think we maybe dive in a little bit more on is you brought up confidentiality. Are there ways, because it seems like one of the things in this scenario that Tom is really hung up on is he seems a little timid on actually having the conversation. So what are maybe some techniques or things that we all can encourage, or you guys witness in the work environments of making sure that the staff can create safe zones also for themselves, not knowing just confidentiality, but knowing that they have a room that they can go in that's safe, that they can have those conversations without judgment, that you can have open and honest, sometimes very emotional conversation, and be met at that and not feel that judgment, and really create kind of safe havens within the work environment so that they can, because some of this might just be a situational thing and they need to blow off steam. So how can you also create those if you're doing a 60 to 70 hour work week, you may need to blow off steam for a little bit and to get back to work and really clear your mind. So what are maybe some other things that they can think of, and how do we create a safe place for that to happen too?
I take a shot. I think, Jeff, that's really what you're talking about in my mind, is really the culture of the firm as a whole, and the employees right from the get-go. You know, even as they enter the firm, the onboarding process, that they understand that is part of the culture, and at least in our firm, and you can tell me if I'm nuts, it's a two-way street. I mean, I think our employees feel comfortable talking to their managers, talking to the partners. Giving the partners and the managers feedback is critical, because, you know, I always like to use the adage, you come in and ask me a question and I look at you and say, you think I know the answer because I'm a partner. Well, you're crazy. So please come to me and let's have a conversation about whatever the issue might be. It might be a problem we're trying to solve, or it might be a personal issue that you or I have with this scenario. And I think it needs to be really set up at the beginning that it is okay to walk into your manager's or your partner's office and have that conversation, and know that you're not going to get a pink slip the next morning, or you're not going to get fired that afternoon. And that's a culture that takes some time to develop. It doesn't happen overnight.
It does, because I think what happens is it shows by your experience or your examples help foster that. You could say, I have an open door all the time.
But it's the action.
Because I actually had a former boss once that always said he had an open door, but he really didn't, because he didn't want to hear it. Or when he did hear it, he would just blow it off. So you actually have to go through the motions. I mean, we don't necessarily tell people to come talk to me, I don't think, but they do. But what I do is I listen to them, and then I do what I give advice, and then sometimes I then have to go and make changes based on that with their direct supervisors or other partners. And with, like I said, understanding some confidentiality. They don't need to know everything. And in fact, usually it's just the opposite. People are telling me way more than I need to know. And I say, you know, you don't have to share that much, but then they feel they have to, because they're just, you know, they need to get it off their chest, you know. So things have nothing to do with work.
It's a compliment.
Yeah,
to you.
right. So I don't have a good answer for that, because it just kind of happened organically for me. I mean, even remember when I was even a partner, I was just managing a group of people. Everyone kept on coming to my office, even people I weren't even managing. I had a couch. Maybe that was a mistake. I had a couch, and they would lay down on the couch, and they would just start, and I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, so.
But I think what you're saying, Dan, is you're a good listener.
Right, yeah.
You're trying to really understand where they're coming from.
Well, and I'd like to just interject too. Tom or someone else out there could be at a firm where they are not comfortable, or they were met with, no, I can't help you, whatever, go figure it out. Let's say just very non-compassionate management. So, but that's why there are coaches. So people can find coaches. It's a sacred, separate place. I'm an unbiased professional, as other coaches are, and he can at least talk it through to the initial stages and see where he goes from there on his end. But you know, hopefully, most of the cultures, you know, I would encourage people to go to their management. But if management doesn't, you can't give what you don't have. So some management might have a different kind of style and maybe not as capable of helping someone who's struggling, a struggling employee. If that's the case, I would encourage someone to seek it out elsewhere and then work back into what changes need to be made.
And I do have to say, and I think, Alex, you can talk about this, where we fail is we don't have a space for the people to meet and and we actually were working towards
we do
that.
have that back room, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nasty
And the
little
library's
room.
perfect.
Yeah,
There's
but
so many things in there, it just mutes
Just put a couch in
everything.
there.
right, so, but we're working towards that. But yeah,
I think one of the things that we've done recently in our office, and it really started, not recently, but probably about 3 or 4 years ago, is we put the entire staff through a program that we were dealing with a coach, a leadership coach, but it really talked about situational leadership. And Jeff's been through it. I went through it. I wish I had it a lot earlier in my career than I did. It was a program, probably something that Kim could certainly do in her business. But now, after this, most of the staff have been through it. Every time we get a new group of people, we put them through the same program. And it really is, to your point, Dan, really it's understanding the situation that you're in, regardless of what level you're at, and using those leadership skills to have the conversations that are very difficult to have at times, oftentimes confidential, as you said. But it has, I think it's made a difference, that, to your point earlier, Jeff, that you know, people are a little less nervous, a little less afraid, especially the younger emerging professionals, to really have that conversation with their manager, who might have 4 times as much experience or 10 times as much experience as they have in the industry. And the same thing with the managers, are now comfortable being better listeners and sympathetic to whatever the situations might be. So that was a cool program, and it's
That's
very
a
much
great,
like what you're doing.
absolutely.
Regularly.
It's a wonderful thing for firms to do. I just saw an article literally today, a business coach sharing, you know, you're a manager and now you've had things you didn't expect your employees to come to you with. And he listed the bullet items, which is, you know, an employee who's lost a child in an accident. You have an employee who is sending their child to rehab. They're, you know, so even beyond, some things very uncomfortable, situations, conversations, maybe tragic events, but as a manager, how do you respond? And to think about it ahead of time was the advice of in this particular article, was to think about how you might address that ahead of time. So I love that you had mentioned sort of a training program to help prepare managers to manage.
Yeah, yep. And it really, we do it across the board so that even the people that are being managed, quote unquote, understand and can provide feedback to their managers. So it really becomes a both direction.
I think it's also, at least, well, in all the cases, it's really about how we as professionals remember that in these circumstances, really at the end of the day, what it comes down to is we're asking for help. It's a certain situation that might be the trigger, if you will, or some of the things that you were bringing up, Kim, but it's really remembering that you're going to your boss because you're asking for help, not necessarily because you want to quit, but something, the give is asking for help.
And it's okay to ask for help.
And it's okay to ask for help. And it's remembering
okay.
that
You're
it's
not
okay
alone.
that you're not, you're still human. You said everyone, earlier we were in conversation, everyone wakes up in the morning and they put on clothes the same way. I mean, some people might put it on backwards or inside out, but they're still putting on clothes. It's
Only when you're really stressed.
Or if you want a
your
snow
shirt's
day,
on
you're putting
inside
your-
out.
or if your kids want a snow day, right? But it's just remembering that, in those circumstances, that we're all human too. We all have stuff going on, and how do we support each other through it so that, the teams that I work on, and I hope I portray this as much as I can, I always say, we spend more time at work. Let's have fun while we're doing it. Let's go into these design problems and have fun. Otherwise, that just leads to burnout too. So how do you still bring that lightness to make sure that, is Tom sitting cranking 60 to 70? Like, what other interactions might help lighten even the mood so that, the time commitment, finding that balance too, and the efficiencies you said, how do you find the balance so that you're still having fun? Because that, at least in some of what I try with what I'm doing, helps minimize the negativity.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. If you're not having fun, then you don't want to get out of bed and put the wrong socks on or your pants on.
I mean, you
backwards.
might.
Doesn't really matter. You might.
Could be fun.
But if you're not having fun, you're in the wrong place. You really need to, find a place where you're enjoying what
Yeah.
you're doing, so you feel good about getting up in the morning, and it shouldn't feel like work. It should be fun.
Yeah.
So
totally
I think
agree.
that's why we're all here.
Great. Do you guys have any other thoughts for Tom before we head into another scenario, or final comments on that one?
Just one quick final comment. I also believe that generational things are changing.
True.
That Generation X, the way I was taught was you go to school, you do your apprenticeship, and the management style was just throw you in, sink or swim, and with very little support and crazy hours. And that's what we did. There was nothing to think. I don't think that's the case now with the millennials and the younger generation. They are looking for a better work-life balance, and they're willing to even get paid less to have a better work-life balance than getting paid more but to be doing 80 hours a week. So I think that's also just a trend that people have to be mindful
Aware
of.
of. Yeah. Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I mean, we at King & King offer a flexible work. We've talked about it a little bit. So we have that flexibility, and really, that model allows for, it's the accountability of, we all know what tasks have to be completed, and we as team develop our schedules for expectations and when projects have to go out. And, it's up to you guys to figure out. Some people are night owls. They want to work from 8 p.m. till 1 a.m. Everyone who knows me, I'm at the office by 6:15 every morning because I am the most productive between 6 a.m. and noon, getting stuff done where I crank. So I tend to be morning person and then start wavering off at the end of the day to reset and recharge for whatever the afternoon activity. So I think that's very, very much so. I agree with that. So before we go into scenario 2, again, I'm going to encourage everyone in their viewing parties, if you have a question, click on that participate. We are going to do questions at the end of the 3 scenarios, so hopefully Kara will have a nice little pot of questions for us that we can answer and hopefully give you guys some more thoughts on that. So the second scenario, in this one we're going to talk with Sharon. So Sharon was thrilled to learn she was being made a principal in a 30-person firm she has worked for 8 years. She has been a part of the growth of the firm and prides herself in saying she has it all. Lately, Sharon has been feeling like all she is doing is working, sleeping, and working again. She's becoming resentful of listening to everyone else's problems, not being able to concentrate, and has put aside her dream of going back to school. She is beginning to think of that her professional success has prevented her personal growth and is even considering taking another career path. What advice can we offer to Sharon? So Kim, what are your thoughts on that
I
one?
love this one. I love this one because a couple of things jump out right away in the scenario for me. The number one thing is resentment. So the part where she's talking about I'm doing nothing but sleeping and working, and I'm listening to people's problems, and I don't have time for myself to pursue my own dreams. Okay, so there's a resentment. When we feel resentment, it's a red flag to us that we need a boundary. So what I would do as a coach with Sharon is help her establish the right boundary. And it seems that one of them might be being approachable all the time, because she might be a very good listener and she's a really great person, and that's why she just became the principal of the firm. She's very effective. She's probably a good problem solver. As we chatted earlier, I realized that it's common in your profession. You're all problem solvers. So she needs a boundary on when people can come to just vent to her, or what they're talking about. What does she really need to listen to? Maybe it's certain times of the day that are more conducive. Maybe she blocks herself off. People may not know it, but it's like she schedules the time when she's just working and not listening to people, so it's not constant interruptions, which reminds me of the second thing that popped out to me, multitasking. So multitasking, oh, it's so great for the last couple decades. This is what everyone thought, but it's really not. And it's task switching. So every time you're interrupted, you're taken off task. And I would imagine you probably are feeling that already, because people are starting to realize that as we become trained for distraction, and we have more and more people say, oh, I have adult ADD, or oh, I can't focus. As we see that in the world, in our communities, we go, wow, we're really all just being bombarded all the time, and we're multitasking
Now,
too
is
much.
it true? I thought I heard a number of years ago that there was some study or research that they determined there is no such thing as multitasking.
Yes, that is
That
true.
we
You're
call it
task
that,
switching.
but it's not. You're not doing 2 things at once. You might think you
not.
are, but you're not.
You are absolutely correct. So it's really task switching. So that switching back and forth, one of the most powerful examples I saw of that is, imagine, I don't know if anyone likes Wheel of Fortune, but you're filling in the puzzle, and so you have this, and it was, let's say, a welcome homecoming, right? And were the words. If you were to fill in the letters on each line and go back and forth, W, H, E, O, you can see where this is going, how hard that would be. And so when you think about it that way, that's such a vivid example of what task switching is probably doing, what multitasking is doing to our brains. So for her, and it's similar to time management, similar to Tom, is for her to be more efficient with her own calendar and the times that she's interrupted, and then being available to be interrupted, because I'm sure that's part of her job as well. So those are the things that jump out at me, and I would challenge her about the whole, maybe I shouldn't do this, because actually, right when you were reading the scenario, I wrote down another note. It reminds me of striving and not arriving. So she should be excited that she finally made it to that position. And I would want her to get back to the happy place about that, and not the, oh no, what have I done, right? So it's that she, maybe she's still striving, maybe she is allowing for interruptions and really operating in default in reaction to what everyone else needs. You're just responding to everyone else's needs. So we would talk about that too in a coaching scenario.
So multitasking, Dan, is walking and chewing gum at the same time.
I've never been good at that.
But I agree,
You're actually chewing in between steps.
and between yeah, there you go.
That's the way to do it.
Just to take off on, if you don't mind, I'll
No, go ahead.
take off on what Kim started. I think one of the things that I picked up on, any transition of an individual, doesn't matter whether you're going from, and I'll use the titles or the levels in our office, if you're going from a designer to a team leader to a project manager to an associate to a principal, whatever those levels might be in your firm, transition, this is what I think Sharon is facing, is transitioning from probably a senior project manager or an associate that had a lot of project responsibility or team responsibility to a partner who is now has more of a firm, strategic, long-range planning, other responsibilities that she's taking on. And one of the things I think, in addition to what Kim said, is trying to figure out really how to better delegate some of those tasks that she was doing yesterday as a project manager or as a senior project manager leading teams to people that, and hopefully when she stepped into the partnership role or the principal role, there was a plan to have other folks step into positions and taking some of her responsibility away. And I think she needs to be willing to do that.
Right.
And it's really, that transition is going to happen even maybe for Alex, who is in a designer level, I heard you say, into a project manager role or a team leader role, where all of a sudden you're managing your own time and getting your piece of the team or the project done within the guidelines that your manager's given you, to all of a sudden managing a team where you've got to get some work done yourself as well as manage the people that are now under you or that are part of your team, regardless of what their title is. So I think that's a challenge for Sharon, is to figure out how to trust other people to pick up the tasks that she was doing and only take on and do the tasks that she needs to do, or that she now has the expertise or the responsibility for.
And then even the management skills and maybe even coaching skills
That
to
go
be
along with
within
it.
the firm is right. She's used to being more task oriented and then switching, but if you, with the proper training, she could embrace that part more and not feel like she's just having people to come to her with problems.
right.
She may feel better management skills of addressing them and enjoying the fact that she's available to the staff.
So one of the things that jumps out to me is, as you move up from these positions and you're getting up, sometimes it's not a good fit, because we're architects. We're not business managers. We're not human resource managers. So we weren't trained for this. And it's perfectly fine to get to that position and say, I'm not doing any architecture. I'm spending all my day invoicing or writing memos or, approving timesheets. You know what? Then maybe that's not the right thing. And maybe then you just say, okay, I have to step down to something like a more project manager, senior project manager. Because what's a red flag is if she's thinking about switching careers, because maybe it's not architecture, it's now she's in this different role. And it's not for everyone. For me, I actually like it. So, and I am fortunate because I have 3 other partners. And when we formed the firm, we kind of all figured out, this is what one partner's going to do the business management, one's going to do the human resource, one's going to do the marketing, and the other one's going to do the staff education and other things. So we kind of worked that out, what people's strengths were. But sometimes you don't have that ability. The other thing I would like to say is, without knowing her dynamic in her firm, is why are they coming to her? Is there somebody else, another partner or an HR person that she can start delegating these things to? The other thing is, as you said, to set up boundaries. Occasionally you do have to just say, I can't deal with that now, or no, because you have other things you have to get done. But there's a very delicate balancing act, because if it is a critical thing that you need to deal with that staff person because it is important, you're going to have to switch gears. So knowing what, even if it's really important to that staff, really understanding what is important, is, you know, you can say, well, can I talk to you tomorrow about this? And not always being, it's a balancing act, because you got to be there, because the most important thing is our staff and our talent. We are a professional service industry. We don't necessarily produce a product like an iPhone to give to people. It's our talent and our design, and you're only as good as your talent. So you got to constantly be shepherding that and making sure your talent is living up to their potential and also is happy. So it's a delicate balancing act of that, of also servicing your needs, of what you need to get done, and also your staff needs. The other thing I'd just like to point out is the thing about going back to school. Because what does that mean? Is she looking to do something like, maybe she wants to go back to school to get an advanced degree in some subset of architecture? Well, that could be a great asset to the firm, and, you know, talk to the firm about that. If she's talking about switching careers completely, well, you know, that's a whole nother issue. So.
Well, I think it's also the mindfulness of, which you guys all kind of touched on a little bit, is what are truly Sharon's goals, and there's someone helping her set that, because maybe, as you guys said, if this isn't the right fit or the right position as part of the goals or what she envisioned her career path to be, is the answer really switching career paths or careers, or is time going to repeat itself for Sharon? And, you know, what happens when she becomes a manager in the next industry? So kind of maybe one of the things to think about is everyone throughout their career reassessing what their goals are? I mean, everyone should have goals, short-term, long-term goals, even as they're nearing retirement, having goals to strive for or to hit. So really considering that maybe too, and how do you balance those things?
And I don't want to toot our own horn here or what we do in our firm, but when we have performance reviews, really the bulk of them is geared towards establishing goals not for the firm, for, you know, and we actually keep track of what we decided were the goals for the year, 2 years, 5 years, and then what the firm needs to do to help shepherd those goals. And I'll be honest, a lot of times we have the review again and we look, oh, we didn't do that for you, we didn't do that for you, we gotta, but at least we're having a dialogue throughout the process of what people like to do, what they don't like to do, what they need from us. I need more construction administration experience so I can get those hours in my IDP. And so we have a dialogue like that, and that's important. And it still even happens on the partner level. We just had a strategic planning retreat where we all kind of talked about what we want to do in the future too. So you constantly have to be doing that no matter what level you're at.
Yeah, I heard on that basis, I heard an interesting statistic it might have been from a business coach, that people spend more time planning their vacation, if they go on vacation, than their career, and thinking about the goals for their own career.
Or maybe they spend more time planning their vacation than the actual vacation itself.
Right, and then they work the entire
Yeah.
vacation. I'm going to let Alex comment, but I do have some follow-up thoughts on Dan's comments.
I mean, it does definitely depend on the work culture. In my position, like Dan said, we have performance reviews, and I've only been at the firm for 7 months now, and I had my 6-month review.
It was supposed to be our 3-month review, but we
yeah.
did it in 6 months. So I'm not saying we're perfect. So it was.
Dan, I'm with you.
It was your 3-month
I
review.
feel like I've been there for a whole year now.
No, it was a 3-month review, but it took us 6 months to get it.
Right.
Done. So time management problem.
Yeah.
We got the same issue.
We'll talk.
But,
That's why you're confused.
yeah, it's fine. But yeah, so I had noted that for my IDP hours, I have not touched anything construction administration related. So he literally next day, all right, we have some submittals for you, and this will slowly wean you into this whole construction administration scenario. And it definitely is helpful that I can be open with a partner of a firm, telling them what I need to do, like what my goals are to meet this next goal. It's not even just those higher and larger goals, it's the ones that are that come before that I think are more important to focus on as an emerging professional.
I know this is geared towards emerging professionals, but
Yeah.
one thing I could tell you is, I do the HR and I understand, and the performance reviews, so I understand what people need. I also do the scheduling or work with people do the scheduling, so I'm putting that in.
Both pieces.
And so if you just have an HR guy that's listening to these things, and then the scheduling people, they're not talking, they're not going to know to say, oh, who are we going to do on this project for construction administration? Oh, Alex, she needs it. And so it's about collaboration within your office too.
Yeah.
I think just a couple other comments on where Dan was headed. In Sharon's case and where I started, we all were trained as architects, and we like that. We went into this field because we like design, we have talent, like to solve problems. But anybody starting out, even in Alex's position, who is thinking about a career path that's going to end up where Dan and I are, or where Jeff is in a project management role, every time you take that step, and I'll speak personally, I had to figure out how to continue to do architecture in a different way. Because when I was a designer or a team leader, I was actually practicing architecture. And then I moved into project management, and the amount of architecture that what I learned to do in school and solve problems, I had to figure out how to do that in a different way. And part of that, as you stepped up those different into those different positions and took on more responsibility, authority, whatever it might be, internally within the firm or with the clients, one of the things that I found myself thinking about is how can I help the emerging professionals as a more senior person and still be involved in architecture. So how do I coach and mentor the younger staff? Because at some point Alex is going to take my job, or she's going to take Dan's job, and Jeff's going to take my job. So it's getting that next generation of architects. And it isn't, you're right, Dan, it is not for everybody. But that's one of the things that as architects sometimes we struggle with, because you lose the ability to actually do architecture, but you're still doing it in a different way. So that's kind of back to the mindset, is how do you continue to make it positive for yourself as you step up and get into, HR side of the business, or the billing side, or the performance review side, all things that need to be part of our business to make it successful.
And also realizing that when someone's stepping up and if they're struggling with the management standpoint, we weren't trained on that.
Yeah.
So don't be hard on them. And we do have some people that are struggling, and we say, well, then we need to get you some courses, management courses, and provide those for you. So that's important. And again, not from an EP standpoint, but from a partner standpoint, the reason why and this is completely a selfish reason, the reason why you do this, of bringing up your staff and including your staff and letting them know what it takes to run the business, because at some point you're going to have to transition and if you don't do that, if you are a control freak and you keep everything to yourself or with the partners, when that time comes when you want to retire, there's no one to pass the baton to. And I've seen this happen over and over again, and then they're scrambling, they're hoping someone will buy their firm, an outside thing. It's important to be educating and be uplifting your staff, so and I think people are afraid that, they'll take my place. Well, there's that, but there's also a problem if no one takes your place. So,
Opposite exchange.
Well, and that
and
brings...
the thing about King, you're like one of the oldest
We've
firms.
been at it for 150 plus.
So somehow
years,
they got the transition thing figured out.
I guess you got that down. And I would just offer, and maybe we probably need to go to the next one too, is that moving her mindset. Now you're a principal, so you can be a part of the change, right? So whatever she needs to rearrange, I'm sure she can talk to people about whatever training she might need, or there's always that opportunity of talking it out with a coach too. So
Well, that's a good point, because she, as a partner, she can say, we need to hire a full-time HR manager because I'm not doing it anymore.
Exactly,
You know?
and that
So-
might be exactly what the timing
we
is
did.
for. She's
Oh, I'd like to do
overloaded.
that at some point. You know? Yeah.
We got to, I actually, you're doing what I did. I did that. I was the HR guy with zero training.
No, same here.
It's
Yeah.
all seat of the pants. And it's like, what am I
You
doing?
survived.
Yeah, you survived.
I remember a couple before we formed this firm. I was actually interviewing for a position, and the person's like, "Well, what HR experience do you have? What training?" And I'm like, "My training is being mismanaged for
Yeah,
20
on the
years.
job.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
of how everything not to do from an HR standpoint." I go, "Yeah."
You'd experienced it all.
You're right. I'm like, I know what not to do now. So.
The other thing that I was thinking of as you guys were talking through this, one thing that I know I do with some of the staff, and even with like the partner who I work most closely with, we set up regular touchdown meetings. So we set up me with my direct staff. We try for putting a permanent on the calendar every month, so that way we're always touching base with them. And it's not the project specific work that you're doing the day to day. It's setting aside, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just a touch bit. How are you doing? How are, creating that relationship so that we can reinforce and sometimes, if you can wait that long with certain of these things, that might be a great opportunity for Sharon or anyone is, I know we have a one-on-one coming up in 3 days. Do you think, can it wait?
Can you make it?
Can you make it to there? Is it an emergency that we need to talk about now? But, it's great, and it's an opportunity. I try to have them regularly with every partner so that there's a conversation. And it's not, the frequency of those can vary depending on what your position is in the firm and who you're dealing with. Like Jim and I is on an as-needed basis.
Once in a while, yeah.
His brother, who I work with more, we meet every month, and it's a touch base. Even if it's 10 minutes, how are you doing? But it's how are you doing? Are you okay? Are you, he jokes. He comes over. He's like, "Where's the snorkel right now on those weeks where we're crazy?" I'm like, the water's starting to drip over it. So it's like, well, so how do we, create that situational leadership? How do we create those environments where, okay, well, maybe we need to figure out a way, what are the deadlines of that week? Can we shift manpower? Because that's one of the beauties of working in teams, right? You have a safety net, you have opportunity, and then that delegation of, if everyone can be in that mindset of kind of this nimbleness and flexibility, and again, it goes back to culture, but really having those dedicated, if you want to bring up a work thing that is project specific, fine, but let's make sure we're touching on the human resources. What can I do for you? Am I supporting your goals? How are you tracking on your goals? Do we have to shift course? And really that way we're not giving an annual review, writing down a whole bunch of goals, and then that's filed for the 364 days, and we pull it out the day before and we're like, crap, I failed them because I didn't do any of that stuff. And then we scramble and like, all right, I just enrolled you in an online course, so you're going to do this, So having the opportunity and as an employee, empowering yourself to ask for that. It can be a two-way street. You can literally say, hey, Dan, can I set up a regular meeting with you?
And it definitely, you don't rely on your managers only. If you
Two-way street.
If you are saying, listen, we promised you give me more construction administration, it hasn't happened yet, say that, because we're all busy too,
Yep.
and we're trying our hardest. So
Well, and drive your career.
right, it's your, in some ways, your career is a lot like healthcare. I like to say is you got to be your own advocate when you're going for healthcare and push the doctors and
Yep.
push them. You got to push your managers to get the best service for you. And from an HR standpoint, I always like to liken it for an HR manager is to, like Sharon, is when you call, I just know this because I have kids, you call the pediatrician, there's this dial tree where they say, if it's an emergency situation, dial this number now or go to the emergency room. If it's a sick child, dial this number and we'll schedule with sometime this week. If it's a well child visit, we'll schedule you sometime in a month.
Next month.
You got to handle HR like that and almost either tell people or while they're talking to you, understand, is this an emergency?
Yeah.
Is this a well child or a sick child
Yeah.
topic? And prioritize that accordingly.
I think really what Jeff is saying, and somebody said it earlier, or maybe even in the first scenario, we're human beings. And we, as architects, we're creating relationships with our clients, but our clients are more than the people paying the bills. We have clients that are our employees, we have clients that are contractors, we have clients that are consultants, depending on the firm. So we're creating those relationships, and the one-on-ones that Jeff talked about, we're all doing that in our firm. And it's not necessarily, as Jeff said, it's not necessarily the person you're working with, but it's someone who can maybe
Correct.
help you understand. And so I know a
Could be
little
a
bit
peer.
about, yeah, it could be a peer. I know about Jeff. I know his family's got a cottage over on whatever, and I know that he's got, siblings, and I don't know when their birthdays are, but I know, a little
Enough.
bit about him as a person.
Right. You know enough.
And to your point, Dan, it's where can you find the people that are going to help you the most? And it may not be your manager, and maybe somebody else who can provide that, support for you, whatever
Correct.
whether
And it's that human effect,
Yeah,
right?
it
You talk
is.
about the mind having the negative bias, because that's, in one of the conversations we had, it's what the cavemen did. It's self-survival.
Yes.
It's survival of the fittest. So your mind is trying to predict all of the outcomes of a scenario, but having that, those few moments of courage to just say, you know what? Why can't I go and ask for them? Having the courage. I've had, some of the conversations I've had to have with partners with the negative mindset, just having those 7 seconds of courage to walk in the door and say, can we talk? Never once has it come backlash, because sometimes they don't know what's going on either. So you just having that few minutes of courage to have a conversation with them could be eye-opening for them as well, and be like, okay, wow, maybe I do need to open my door more, as we were talking about earlier, that open door policy. Maybe I really do maybe I'm out of touch a little bit with what's going on with the internal clients, as you were saying. So, having a little bit of courage to put yourself in what for you might be a very awkward position, you're never going to be I've never been chastised for it.
And just to that point too, quickly, is that caveman brain that we all have. So just a note, when we get very stressed, because this is a talk on burnout, and this applies to all of us, when we get very, very stressed, if we go into fight or flight, which is now like things are really bad and the adrenaline starts rushing around and we're not in the right part of our brain to reason. So that's why it is important to ask for help or go take some deep breaths. It actually activates the relaxation response. I didn't even know what that used to do. Like, I didn't know, what's this thing about breathing, right? Well, when we go into fight or flight, because we start to panic about something, and Sharon, in a good, all of these scenarios could be conducive for that, but Sharon, like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Now in a panic, I'm overworking, I'm overtired. So in that panic mode, she's not going to reason well. So the taking of the deep breath activates the relaxation response, which keeps you in your reasoning, higher functioning part of your brain. And then that way you can do some problem solving. So they've done studies. Emotionally strong people don't just plow through. They step back and reflect. So I think that's applicable to everybody in any stressful situation, work or home, just to keep that in mind.
That's awesome. Great. Does anyone have some final thoughts for Sharon before we go on to our third? Okay. So in scenario 3, we're going to meet Chantel a little bit. Chantel is still in school, but graduating soon. She has begun her job search and has spoken to several grads who have been in the workplace for a few years. Some of them have told her that she has to work for the right firm or her life will be miserable. Chantel has worked very hard to graduate from architecture school and is dismayed that some of her resources are likening her chosen career to indentured servitude. So what help can we give to Chantel? Kim, how about some thoughts on that.
I think Alex should go after Kim on this
Yes,
one.
I agree.
Right.
So I'm giving you some time to think, Alex.
In full disclosure, we kind of threw Alex in at the last minute,
Oh,
so
okay.
she didn't have a chance to be part of the debriefing, so she's kind of on the fly right
She's doing
here.
great.
Yeah.
So coaching tip on this one, okay, boy, you just think about this balloon, so excited, graduating, working so hard, loving architecture, getting ready to go into the field, and hearing these things from other architects and just being so deflated, right? So definitely negativity bias on this. So you just want to, what I would do as a coach is get her mindset, get things back grounded, which is, okay, that's been the experience of some people. And of course you're listening to them, and they might be friends and fellow students that you trust, but that is their experience. And on the negativity bias, we need to understand, and it's helpful, time and again, it's very helpful to know this, is that the negativity bias that our brains have is that we are more alert to things that are bad, that it sticks with us more than things that are good. Good is an expectation. And so our caveman ancestors needed that to survive, right? Note the danger, run from it, and survive. And we are all the descendants of the people who did that the absolute best. We're alert to danger, right? So it's kind of a modern stress problem for us, because we're not running from danger, right? So the negativity bias, the best way to remember that is, as they say, our brains are Teflon for good and Velcro for bad, right? So we hang on to the bad stronger, and then the good, the Teflon, is like good things just flow right off. So I would get her more grounded, and that's been their experience, but I'd want her to use more of the law of attraction and manifesting. She's done so much hard work. Then maybe just think about what firm you do want, and then when you're on interviews, be very attuned to the culture. What does it look like when you walk into the office? You know, do the people working there look like they enjoy it? And put your thoughts on what you want, not on what you don't want, right? So it would be easy for her to go, oh, I just don't want to be in a terrible firm. Oh, I just don't want to be miserable when I start my career. Or what, did I make the wrong choice? And for her to stay grounded, she's done all this work. She should be excited about it. I'm sure she loves architecture. So to be astute, put her thoughts on what she wants, understand the negativity bias. So if a couple of those peers of hers, a couple of those people who told her that, oh, it's going to be miserable, well, they may have had miserable experiences that are really sticking with them, right? Like Velcro. So she's also going to be part of this field. So she can be the change. You know, she's a young professional, will be emerging professional, and future partner or future HR person, right, are in the firm. And so she can be the change. How can she be a part of the type of culture she would want at work? So those are my thoughts. So I'll pass it off to Alex.
I mean, yeah, of course, the first couple of years are hard. You're just producing. Like, my friend and I used to call ourselves CAD monkeys. We were just going and going and going, and it's nonstop. It's not that fun. I designed bathrooms for 3 straight years, and I was brain dead. Like,
Okay.
I was like, this is not challenging. So, of course, someone coming out of college, you're going to be like, oh, well, it's not that great. It's not as fun. You don't get to be as creative as you thought you would have, unless you're at the right firm. Like you said, it really, you need to understand what you want and what you're looking for in a firm, what types of projects they work on. If you don't have interest in the projects that they work on, why would you work there? Also, sorry, let me reflect back on this.
Well, and while you're thinking about that too, you bring up a good point too. Do you feel like perhaps maybe that's a little bit of like, you know, paying your dues? I mean, that might be a real Gen X expression, but it is like, you know, paying your dues, but then the rewards come. So it's like, maybe it's not that miserable. You may just be really working hard and it's not as creative, but you're working towards something, right? As you
Absolutely.
extend
You're
in the
developing
career,
your
you're
skills.
developing.
Right.
Back to
And
your-
you need to be understanding of that going into your job search.
Right.
Like I said before, every first job is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be what you have always dreamed of. 'Cause
There's a
it's-
great stress relieving question. This can apply to this situation and to everything that you just made me think of. Whenever we feel stressed about something, so this example or any stress in your life, you can ask yourself, what is my unrealistic expectation? And what is a more realistic expectation? And so usually when we answer that for ourselves, you know, what is my unrealistic expectation? The answer in this scenario could be that my first few years are going to be super creative and I'd be doing really neat projects, rather than I'm doing what the firm needs me to do as a, you know, first year out of college employee, second year out of college employee.
And it's a learning experience for the
Right.
future. Yeah,
Right.
so it's back to the
Your
positive-
foundation.
Yeah, the foundation, the positive attitude. Alex, I was gonna add something, but
Yeah,
I'll
go
let you
ahead.
finish. What I wrote down was for those soon-to-be emerging professionals that are entering the architectural career, is you have an opportunity, I think, to, at least in the present market, you have an opportunity to really probably choose, as you said, choose a firm that is doing at least the type of projects, whether it's a building type or market type, that you're interested in. And then I think secondly, you have the opportunity to literally interview the firm. Do a lot of research, understand what they actually do. You can probably check out a website or social media or some way to find out, are they having fun every day at work? And you know what, when you go to the website, is it, do employees have smiles on their faces, or are they, you know, whatever. So you literally could go into the interview, and I know at least in our firm, we take a lot of time interviewing new employees with multiple people in the firm. So it's not just the partners or the HR person, it's project managers, it's team leaders, it's designers. They're talking to, you know, they might have 5 different interviews with groups of 2 to 3 people, because we're checking out the young professional to see if we think, and a whole bunch of gut reactions to a, you know, 1-hour interview or whatever it might be. So you have the opportunity to flip that around and do it the other way. Ask questions of the interview team.
And
see what
definitely
kind of-
not to be afraid to do that, because I
Absolutely,
know
yeah.
so many people who have just gone into interviews and it was the worst thing of their life. They were just, this was too overwhelming, and then they come out and I was like, okay, well, did you ask them anything? Did you get any feedback from them? Like, how do they run their firm? Ask them these types of questions. What do you guys do on a daily basis? And how are you guys such a successful firm? What made it get to that point? And I feel like people don't know that they can do that.
Can I ask a question? Is that still the thought when you're graduating or near graduating, that, you know, you're going to be putting in a ton of hours and
Yeah.
Okay. I just, 'cause
It
I've been
totally
so far
is.
You get
coming out
burned.
of school.
Yeah.
It was like a rite of passage.
Right.
Everyone
Rite of
knew that you
passage,
were
that's it.
leaving to draw bathrooms. That's what was always
Well,
said.
You know what? But
It's
if you
true.
think
It's
about
not.
if you think
It's
about
not the
other
truth.
professionals, you know, doctors with their residencies. If you think what we do is grueling,
Yeah.
what they do is even more grueling.
Yep.
Even lawyers, you know, when you're first starting out, you're going to have some issues with that. So I think it's just kind of part of being, because let me tell you, from someone who manages people, the reason why you're putting all this extra time in is because you're doing it 2 or 3 times because it's wrong, and because, or it needs to be better. And so, and as you get better at your job, you do it it takes less time. So it's not like they're throwing 80 hours of work on you. It's probably 40 hours worth of work or 35 hours worth of work, but it's taking you 60 hours because you're not there yet. And that's also reflected in your pay, because you're just not that, because we've had, from an HR standpoint, I have people come to me like, I want to make a lot more money. And I say, well, and they give me all the reasons, like their budget, their personal budget. I'm like, that's good. I'm glad you figured that out. But from me, what you're getting paid is what I can bill you at, because of what you are able to do. You know, improve what you can do, and you can get paid more. So a couple of things I was just going to comment on this. Very true that when you're interviewing, you are interviewing the firm as much as the firm is interviewing you. And I can tell you from my standpoint, the resume is only for me to call you. I almost take the resume and don't even look at it from that point forward, because usually it's a phone conversation first and then a face-to-face meeting. And from that, I'm more looking at the person's attitude. Are they interested in what we do? Are they excited? Did they do some research and they know who we are?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they, and we've had people come through the door who are technically far superior than most people, but they would not fit in our office culture. And I could tell that immediately. So I'm like, we're not hiring this person because they're just going to be head down working, and all the distractions from people laughing and screwing around is going to make them upset. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a place for you. But I find it funny when they say indentured servitude, because the reality is you're going to start working someplace, and if it's not a good fit, it's okay to move on.
Get out.
And find something else. You not like you just signed a contract where you're stuck there for 10 years. But the first thing is to get some experience and know what you like and don't like. We've had people come up to us and say, you know, I really like, we do primarily historic preservation and adaptive reuse. I really liked it. I've done it all these years. I want to try a different market. I want to go into healthcare. Well, okay, well, we can't do healthcare. We just don't do healthcare. So, and that's usually, okay, well, if you need to move on, you understand it. The other thing is we always have summer interns. And one thing I always tell summer interns when they're leaving is, even if they loved working here, all right, I think next summer you should go somewhere else. Well, why? Oh, no, you're fine. You're fantastic. But you should try K through 12. You should try healthcare. Because though you might think you love historic preservation, you might like something else. And that's really the time to do it. Is, you know, and so is to get and use this time as you're developing your experience to really branch out and try different things. Don't try it 20 years later when you're kind of already in the kind of established. So I look at it from the positive standpoint. You're going to be working hard, but you're going to be working hard not for the reasons you think. We're not taking advantage of you. You're not slave labor.
Depends.
You shouldn't be.
I was going to say, so I originally started full-time right out of school at an interior design firm, and who wouldn't love that? That's so fun. You're creative. You're picking materials. You get to see all these different things, but I wasn't learning anything related to like construction documents. So one day, my boss comes up to me and says, okay, we need you to do a construction document set. And I'm like, okay, so how am I going to do this? I need someone to show me your standards. I don't know what your standard drawing sets are and all this stuff. But going back to your being overworked part, I remember staying at the office until 1 a.m. at night before the Christmas party, painting doors black. And I'm like, I'm a full-time paid employee. Why am I painting doors when I really need to be learning how to do a construction document set? So really, first jobs aren't always perfect, and you need to understand your goals and where you are in the present moment, and if this is working out for you. Like, I understood, like, okay, interior design, really fun, but it's not getting me to where I need to go and where my goals, where I want to be in the future. I want to be able to produce drawing sets. I want to be able to become a project manager one day and, you know, increase my level throughout a firm. And that's not going to get me places if I'm painting doors.
But that experience then got you your next job.
Yeah.
Right.
Which then, I don't know if there was a job between that. No, there was.
Which was then
another
bathrooms.
Job, but then, so,
Yeah.
But at least if it's indentured servitude and you choose the right firm, you're having fun while you're doing
Right.
it. So,
Yeah. Which wasn't bad.
yeah.
And things that don't work out, you learn from,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
There's
Yep.
lessons in everything, and I like the expression, you know, if things don't go right, go left. So it showed you, okay, this isn't getting me to my goal, so now I need to do something
Right.
different.
Thank you for your
And
time. It was
Right.
enjoyable.
We recently had an employee that left, and he confided to me he was really scared because he was trying something new. And I'm like, and of course it's hard as someone because we didn't want to see him leave, but we're like, I'm like, you got to do it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, because you got to try it. Because if it's a failure, well, you've learned from that.
Right.
And he also could come back if he wanted to. But it was one of those things where, we were supportive of it because we were like, you need to try it. You don't want to be what if all the time. Well, maybe I should have done this.
Yeah.
What
25 years later, say, I should have done it. Yeah.
Right.
What more
Too late.
disturbs me is the employee that stays there forever and never thinks about branching out. And to me, and maybe it's just my personal biases, I feel that they're not pushing themselves.
Right.
And they're too complacent or comfortable.
I was gonna say it's a security thing. I can say that my past 3 years at the old firm I used to work for was great. I could make money, I can grow in the firm, but I just didn't like the work we were doing. It wasn't creative enough for me. But what was holding me back was the security, knowing that I'll always have a job here, knowing like I won't ever get fired. They just like me too much. It's a great work environment, but it was the work that really drew me away, and I actually wound up moving up here and working for you guys. And everything that I've touched so far, project-wise, has been different. So that's a great change for me because I don't like things that are super repetitive because then it just gets boring. That's the good thing with historic preservation and adaptive reuse is you have a new challenge every single time.
And I don't mind I don't know if you want me to share this, but the reality with Alex actually interviewed with us a long time ago, like 3 years ago.
Yep.
I actually, this is HR failure. I couldn't attend hers. I had a scheduling conflict. But what I recall was, we looked at her resume, we had a discussion. This is what you need to do. You need to get out of the interior design firm. You need to be working for somebody else for a while, not us, somebody else, to get more experience. And then you came back once you had some more experience, and we're like, okay, this looks good. And then it was another 6 months, I think, when we finally had an opening. Then we called you. But that was the process and that's what we feel we have to do. We weren't planning on hiring her, but we still said, well, let's talk to her, and because it's about shepherding and developing people, even people you're not even planning on hiring.
And I think that, so let's say you go to an interview, it doesn't work out well, they don't hire you. I think it's important for individuals like myself to ask for feedback. Don't be afraid. Say, thank you for your time, and what are some things that I can work on? Like, if you can share this information with me, why was I not chosen? I would just like some constructive feedback so I can better myself for the future and prepare myself more for my next interview even. So I think that's important.
Sometimes you got to make some real uncomfortable comments. I remember one particular person who interned with us, I had to sit him down and say, I think you need to change professions. This is not what you're doing. And he thought about it, and he came back to me, and he's like, no, I'm wrong. You're wrong. I think I can do it. I said, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people. You just aren't into this, and I think you're going to be miserable. 2 months later, got a different job. He called me. He goes, thank you. I didn't realize how much I was unhappy doing what I was doing. And that's a hard thing to say to someone, yeah, I know you spent 5 years studying this, and
exactly.
you have these huge student loans, but you're not cutting it. You're never going to cut it. It's
wow,
like,
that's
a hard thing to do. But but you have to do it sometimes for their benefit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and the stress of a misfit in a job is huge.
Yeah.
So the stress caused by that, he may have just not wanted to see that because of the time invested. No matter how long you're on the wrong road, it's okay to turn around. And so you helped him with that, and that could have caused you stress having to say that.
Well,
So-
we did, but we
And
had
exhaustion and
we had no
burnout.
envisions of her hiring him back because so he asked for the feedback,
Yeah.
and I'm like, all right, here's the deal.
Yeah.
But I think back to something you said real early, Kim, in this conversation was the mindset. So if you have an individual like that in a firm and they may think they're in the right career and the right path, but their negativism brings others in the firm down
Yep.
because they're like dumping poison in the well. They don't even realize they're doing it.
Yep.
So making that departure makes sense for the individual because you're actually helping them in their future career, but
And
it
that's
also
why
helps
the
the
culture
firm.
is so important.
Yeah,
And
it-
understanding
Yeah.
who works within the team, you know. And honestly, you know what? Sometimes some people work better with other people, and just understanding that. What I always say from an HR standpoint
Don't force
is
it.
do not set people up for failure.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the classic examples I had in one of my first stints at HR for another firm, they were having a problem with this one employee. Been there for 20 years. Oh, he's not doing well on anything we give him. And I said, anyone ask him what he likes to do? Oh, no, why? So I went and said to him, what do you like to do? Oh, I love construction administration.
Light bulb.
Well, nobody likes construction
All of a sudden,
administration.
light bulb.
And so I went back to him.
Permanent construction.
Any
administration.
construction administration you can give him, and he was fine. But it was like 20 years, and no one asking him, "What do you like to do?" Yes, and you know,
And
and
all of a
so
sudden, he's a star.
well, then he
Or at
moved
least
on to
he-
other
yeah,
things,
but
to
at least-
construction management.
Didn't have a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah, but you know,
But
that's
that
just
worked
it's like
with the
you know,
need.
it seems so stupid to ask somebody what they like to do, but it wasn't happening. So.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to nudge them for that self-awareness of realization, you know? Like you said, you're graduating after 5 years, you have all that debt. It's like your mind makes you have to dedicate to it, even if your heart may be telling you something else. So connecting the dots
Yep.
between the mind over matter, if you will, and having that self-awareness and saying it's okay. It's, you know, the only one who's going to suffer through the whole thing is really going to be you at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And-
when you hit a lot of brick walls, it's a sign of redirection.
Yeah.
And so it truly is. It's not that you're not just hitting that wall hard enough. I mean, it's a sign of redirection and
Yep.
to use it. And, you know, in the example, it could be that his father was an architect, or, you know, that it was a big, strong push in the family that he just wouldn't even allow himself to consider that I'm failing at this and I'm not good at this, and to move
In this
on.
particular case, he was really good at drafting, and he just wanted to draft.
Oh.
He did not, and he ended up working for a company that doing shop drawings, and he likes that because it's just drafting,
Yeah.
you know. And I know many people that just like to draft. They like to draw. They don't want all the other baggage
want
that
anything
comes
else
with
with it.
architecture.
And sometimes you need a few of those, but.
Oh, I would love to have just a
Yeah.
couple of those people.
I
yeah.
think Alex said something that just sparked something in a thought, which I thought was great. You said something like, every day since I've been working with Dan, I've been doing something different. Well, I've been doing it a lot longer, and that's what keeps me in the business, because every day is different than the day before.
Yep.
That's why I love it. So that point is what we're talking about here, is if you don't love what you're doing every day, then redirect and do it as soon as possible, because you're gonna be miserable.
Right, and understanding what you do like and what you don't
What
like.
you don't like,
And I
and
think
find it.
that's important. I mean, you're not going to know that as soon as you graduate
Mhm.
college.
No.
People need to understand that. I had a hard time understanding that. I thought I was going to be like, I'm going to go into residential. Everybody wants to do residential because it's fun and creative, but it doesn't happen right away. That's another thing you need to understand is it takes
Patience.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patience.
Patience is really
Patience.
hard because the second you graduate, you're focused on that one major goal. And you forget about everything else in between, how long it takes, what more experience you need, like what do I need to work on. Yes, you do have the IDP hours, the experience hours kind of set you up with those different categories, but even then, you still have to look past that and understand what you want. And I think your point with having different internships is a good idea, because I interned for the interior design firm 3 summers right before I got hired full time and graduated. So I didn't know anything else. So I didn't know if I would have enjoyed a different firm altogether.
Test drive different firms
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
get the opportunity.
exactly.
Yeah,
That
and they're test
actually-
driving you both ways.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of another good coaching tip that can be applied in the workplace, but in your own life. And it's really important to know that our thinking minds, and in coaching we call it the ego, right? So it's our thinker, it's part of our psyche, it's the terminology in positive psychology, and psychology is the ego. It is our problem solver. So it tends to noodle on problems, hence the negativity. So even the most positive person our psyche kind of works that way, right? The ego works that way. That's what it does for us. And if it's not fixing problems or thinking of problems, it thinks it won't exist, right? And so in coaching, we talk about the two selves. So we've got the thinker, the ego here, and sort of your being, the essence of who you are. So the thinker doesn't always have our best interests at heart. So when things get negative, like we're thinking in this scenario, or indentured servitude, you're in a place that's not a fit, just a reminder, your brain is going to noodle on that problem 24/7 and cause you much more stress. And this applies to any problem that you might be having in life. So that's where gratitude's a real good tool. And I know I've heard all of you sort of allude to that. Well, the gratitude for this profession or being done with school and now actually earning a living. And even if it's not exactly where you want to be, it's the experience that I'm going to take to the next job. Sometimes we have to pull ourselves away from that thinker that will have a negative bias. And to the gratitude of, well, I'm good, I'm paying my student loans, or, for the scenario, I think it was Chantal, she, for her to say, well, I might be an indentured servant for a little bit, but I'm going to just start making some money, right? So it's like that balance of the good and the negative, because our thinking mind, our ego, is always going to bring us to, we've got to fix this problem, we've got to fix this problem.
The other critical thing, which I failed to mention, is when you are interviewing the firm, I like to say that interviewing the firm, you're not going on an interview. What do they do for professional development?
Right.
Do they help pay for your licensing exams? Do they give you paid time off? Do they have an in-house university where they're doing lunch and learns and training you? Because that, in my mind, when I tell people, is more important than your compensation and your benefit package. You got to get paid a decent enough wage where you can survive, but all the other stuff, their benefit package, their culture, their work-life balance, do they have a professional development program? These are the things that are more important to you at that stage than compensation.
Yeah, are they investing in their
And then you,
employees?
Right.
yeah, yep.
Exactly, exactly.
Kim, the other thing what you were just saying, not to keep jumping us back and forth, but I think I saw it on Facebook yesterday. A good friend of mine actually posted a post about gratitude journaling. So starting every morning by listing what you're grateful for, what is your gratitude, because you're absolutely right. Gratitude, it sets your positive course. Think of all the good things that you have going for you to help set a mind frame, your frame of mind. So, what are, tools like that too to consider. If you have grueling things ahead, what are you grateful for? Like, what is it going to get you by doing that thing?
And the interesting thing is, it's kind of the last thing our brain wants to do when we're in that mindset, in the negative mindset. So the visual that I like to create is good as an expectation. We're lucky that we live in a part of the world and in a society where good is mostly an expectation and most of our needs are satisfied. So good is all the things that are good in our life are on the shelf getting dusty while our brain is noodling on that problem. So absolutely, a lot of times people go, oh, well, what's that really going to do? But definitely the gratitude journaling, every, 3 things, or just thinking about it in like a 5-minute meditation in the morning sets the tone for your day, sets your intention, and keeps you grounded.
Absolutely.
That's great. Kara, are we getting any questions?
I've got one so far.
So again, we'll encourage you guys, please submit questions. Sorry, please submit questions. We're going to take questions from you guys. We do have one that we can start conversing over, so I'll repeat it. So
Rather than look at individuals and teams identifying productive work habits to avoid burnout, how much should we be looking at an industry-wide effort by firm leadership to avoid contracts that promise to deliver full quality products and shortened timelines that put a lot of pressure on employees?
that's a lot to repeat. So the gist of the question is, instead of focusing on the individual and the team, how, as an industry, can we start to address it with firm leadership and more industry-wide? Correct.
Yeah,
And specifically when you're getting projects that have a very short deadline.
Correct.
So, the team and the firm is then doing a lot of
More
work.
pressure.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's happening more and more, it seems, that clients are saying, we'll pay you an ungodly amount of money, but I want a project that's gonna take 3 years, done in 16 months. So, and that's a
I think we're all seeing more and more of that too. The
Yeah.
expectation of that final deadline, it seems to keep creeping closer and closer to when you're signing the contract. So how are we having, what kind of clients and how are we creating relationships and as an industry setting the expectation that's reasonable for that delivery?
I think part of that issue, I think, is the history of the profession is very cyclical. So there were, and I've been through a few of those, and I'm sure Dan has as well, where right now everybody in this industry, the design and construction industry, is up to here, or maybe up to here, little water running down the snorkel. And so it's hard to have the mindset that says to your client or prospective client in particular, I can't take that on now, or if you want us to do it because we're the firm of choice, can we, how do we negotiate and how do we get better at negotiating with our clients and creating a realistic schedule that's going to meet their expectation as well as not overburden the firm. And at least in our firm, I'm sure Dan does the same thing. Recently, we've just had to turn down work and say no, we cannot do it in that time frame. If you'd like to wait for us, we can do it starting next March or next February or next July. We've had a few clients say, "We'll wait," but others are looking for the opposite. And I think we have to be at least one of the things to continue the discussion about longevity and transition and those kind of things is you've got to be able to understand that if you're here for the long haul and you're doing a good job and you have a good reputation, which I think both of our firms do, that even in the times where things start to drop off, you still are going to be the firm of choice and you're going to have plenty of work to do from your existing clients as well as those people that they talk to.
It sounds like
So it's a mindset.
Yeah, and staying the course. It reminds me of a great coaching tip that would apply in this situation as a workplace situation, but also in many people's personal lives, and it's related to time management too, is no resentful yeses.
Right.
So a resentful yes is actually a no. But you didn't say no.
Say no.
And you weren't firm and you didn't hold your
mentioned
boundary.
it, yeah.
Right? So resentful yes is you say yes to please that person, and then as you are going towards that job, feeling more and more resentful, or your staff, you've done it, and now your whole staff is angry at you because it's not really doable. So absolutely, to your point, is that having the courage for the firm to have the courage to say what is a compromise or what is something that meets your firm's objectives and what your staff needs and the time that you need, and to remember no resentful yeses, to really learn how to say no in certain situations and not let your brain think, oh, if we say no to this, we'll lose X, Y, and Z, right?
Well, I think that scenario is all the way down through the firm. It's the firm.
Yep.
It's the project manager. When you ask the project manager, hey, we've got this potential client, again, they're going to have that resentful yes if they're not thinking about it because they're trying to please the firm or they're trying to please their boss, or even down to Alex's level. When Dan comes and asks you to take on another project, your first reaction is going to be yes.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say no.
Knowing your capacity.
Knowing your capacity of each individual, the team, and the firm is critical.
And to Jim's point, we've had clients where we've had to say no who have been long-term clients, and the outcome of those in some cases are like, well, we have to move on, but in some cases they say, we'll wait. But I would say 9 out of 10 of those cases, roughly, they have said, we have so much respect that you guys actually
Did it.
did
Yeah.
it and
Mm-hmm.
didn't
We're
commit
honored.
to give us less than the quality that you would expect project just because we're your existing client and you would have to feel that you have to say yes. So you actually can forge
Gain.
better relationships and gain more ground by having that honest conversation with them and say, look, we can't do it. And you know, sometimes it's yes, no, but having the conversation with them even has proven like we have so much more respect the fact that you were that honest with us and didn't just take it on because you've been working with us for 10 years or 20 years or whatever.
Right, honesty, integrity,
Yep.
trust.
Right.
But it is difficult.
It is
because-
very
Very
difficult.
difficult.
Because this industry is a feast or famine type of thing. When the economy goes bad, the first thing that goes is construction.
Yep.
And when the economy starts turning good, the last thing that rebounds is construction. So in my experience, when it's good times, you got to do as much as you can. So it's very difficult to say no. But why can't we? I think of how many times personally you like, I need to have this fixed in my house, and the contractor says, I can get you in 3 months. You know, or other things, or suppliers or anything, everyone else does it.
Everybody
So
else, yeah.
why
Exactly.
can't we do it? And yet you usually just you say, all right, I'll wait 3 months, you know? But we tend not to do that only because we have this issue of trying to capture as much as we can during the good times.
Well, and maybe too, if you're on the staff end of that stress, okay, and you're thinking about how do you reduce your stress being on the, the worker end of that, principal said yes to something and now we're all being pushed, is maybe to bring your mindset back to this is our field. It's one of the negatives of the field is that it is a feast or famine, and that we do need to, in order for us to all keep our jobs and to stay as strong as a firm, sometimes we have those feast times to so that we can make
Get
it
through
through
the
the
lean
famine,
times.
get through
Yeah.
the lean time. Sure. So you can use gratitude and as a tool to bring your brain from the negative. We can't do this. We can't do this. We can't do this. You go, okay, well, let's see what we can do.
I don't know. In my experience, because like everyone, we're very busy now, but in my experience, even when you take on these jobs that have these crazy deadlines, almost always there seems to be something else that happens that delays them anyway.
Oh, right.
You know, like they don't have the money yet, and they need 5 years to raise the money. So they're
Okay.
like, a lot of times I get these deadlines like, oh, we got this one that it's a large job, and they want to have it completely done by October, the design part. I'm like, it's never going to happen, but hey, we'll still do it because I know there's 20 things that are going to hold this thing up. They have no clue that they're going to.
Depends on the sophistication level of the
Right.
client.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's also knowing that you're like, yeah, it's never going to happen. So we'll still propose on it.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, I think, Kim, you touched on it, having that conversation with either the team or some of the members that are going to be in the firm that are going to be working on the project, and get some of their input as to what ideas do they have that might be able to make us able to do it if we do actually say yes, not a we should have said no.
Right, kind of
but,
get some buy-in.
Get some buy-in.
And brainstorming too,
and
around how could we
yep,
do this
brainstorming
this
ways
fast?
of how could we do this, what could we do to make this project even more efficient than our normal efficiency. So have those conversations.
What are some tips for managing the stress of loss or an unexpected curveball professionally, personally, and in the context of finding a work-life balance and stopping those negative feelings from derailing your career?
Wonderful question.
You could repeat
I think you have to repeat it.
Yeah.
Though, which
Oh,
if you
sorry,
can,
you need to
or
repeat
you
it,
can
or do you
repeat
want, Jeff, do you want to repeat it, or do you want me to repeat that?
Go ahead, you can repeat it.
So the question was, how do you handle the setbacks or a major loss professionally or personally, and help stay out of a negative mindset once that's happened? And the reason why I jumped in so quickly is we do this a lot. We
Well, I
talk
think
about
that
this.
question was directed to you.
Totally.
So, I mean,
That's all me. I just kind of jumped in front of
it.
it. Is that it's that's resilience. So resilience is the actual definition is bouncing back into place after a setback. So if you think about even sort of the rubber band, even from an elasticity, a rubber band's elasticity, going back into shape. So in resilience training, it's how to move forward. So you need to move to the new position of forward. So the setbacks happen. Some things, it could be loss, it could be personal loss, it could be job loss, reorganization. Those are painful things that happen in life. So there's a great expression: we suffer or we feel extreme stress when we do not accept the isness of things, how things are. So when we can come to some level of acceptance on how things are, what just happened, happened. You know, I didn't want it to happen. It wasn't my choice, or it's happened to me, but kind of get into the position, this is reality now. So what are my steps forward? And you create a path forward. So that's absolutely the best. Now, the second part of that question talked about the negativity. And then how do you kind of have the right frame of mind? How do you avoid that negativity from really kind of maybe being like even a cloak, if you think about it? We've seen it, we felt it, I'm sure, everyone. We're human beings. We're having this human experience. So first thing is, the goal of life is not to have an easy breezy life, right? So we kind of think that's what we want, but we're having a human experience. We're going to experience loss and setback, and it's some kind of it is inevitable. So really the path forward and the positive mindset that you can create is best expressed by an anonymous quote that I heard. What is for me will find me, and what is not for me will miss me. So it's basically saying, this wasn't my plan, but apparently I didn't get that job, or I lost that job, or I loved that job and I was reorganized. Well, there's something else for you that's going to find you. So really to allow yourself to experience your life's path and accepting the setback. But then there's that day-to-day negativity though. So you go, well, now, you know, not feeling good about this. I accept it. No, I don't. I accept it. No, I don't. You know, so that's where you can absolutely gratitude journal, regular journal, write your negative feelings down and then counter them with the positives and the more hopefulness. And well, maybe there's, you know, what's the next thing out there for me, or how am I going to move forward? So I hope that answers.
And I think it's important when you say it's a human experience, because what I can tell you from my experience of doing HR, it's less about the business, it's less about all the paperwork you got to figure out, and it's more about this human interaction. Because, and I've been doing this for a relatively brief amount of time, and I'm going to tell you, I've had almost everything thrown at me, because everyone goes through these things. Not once in their lifetime, multiple times. And it's important in your workplace to have somebody that can then, we're not trained therapists, but at least we can understand, like, oh, this person is going to need some more time off, or this person, you know, and be compassionate for that. So it's not, what I've learned is actually my personal troubles seem to be not as troubling to me, only because I've seen everyone, even the people that seem the most put together, have the same or
same
even bigger issues. And so it's like, oh, this is trivial now because we're all going through this experience.
Right, everyone is. And really, even I'm a coach because of that. So that's part of what brought me to coaching from communication. I lost a child at 35 in a car accident. I was reorganized 3 years later when a new president came from a job I loved. I was into my new job, and my sister was diagnosed with cancer after she had her first baby, and then she passed away 11 months later at 34 years old. So this is why I teach resilience, because of that type of personal loss. My HR was dealing with me in a compassionate workplace. My coworkers were extremely compassionate and helped me tremendously. And so you said it so beautifully. It's happening. This human experience is happening, and whether it's job loss and setback, career redirection. I mean, I really had a lot of that, because if you can imagine, like, couldn't even fathom the loss in our family, and all between 35 and 40. It was all when I was 35 years old to 40 years old, and trying to figure out, well, how do I go forward? How do I continue to be happy and better and not bitter, but without, it's not a getting over. So when we're talking about personal loss, it's more of a weaving into who you are. And so when I say acceptance, because I do want to address in the question, a person could have been saying, including personal loss of life, loss of a loved one, is that it's really just a weaving into the fabric of who you are. So resilience isn't moving to acceptance like, oh, I'm so glad that all happened because now I'm a coach. It's more of, it's part of who I am, and it's been the redirection of my life. If you gave me a switch, I'd change it. I was in a workplace, so even on the work front, I was in a workplace I loved and then reorganized. So, but it was leading me down my path. So I think the resilience when everything's crashing down on you, you can crash course resilience. And so we do, as coaches, do a lot of that, and kind of provide hope and shepherd an individual through a really difficult time period. But it's doable. You are much, much stronger than you think.
And I think you can take that big loss, which I'm not sure what the person who was asking the question was thinking about. You can bring it down to the day-to-day life in an architecture firm. I don't know if Alex has ever made a mistake, but I've made a few myself.
I still
and so, the resilience and the reflection on whatever, and even if you want to say, you know what, I lost a client, or I screwed up and the contractor charged the client extra for something that I made a mistake in the documents. Don't go to the negative on that. Look at it, reflect on it. So what can I learn from it? And how can I take that forward so the next time I have something that's probably never the same situation, but something that's similar, that I won't be doing that again, and I've learned something that I can take forward in my career. So again, I agree with you. It's trying to turn that something that feels at the moment very, 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 very negative into something that can be a positive for your future growth.
And you bring up a really good point about the day-to-day types of losses and setbacks, losing the client, making a mistake that might even be a big mistake, is that resilience plays a role then. How quickly can you bounce back and say, okay, now what do we do? And it's so important. There's an amazing TED Talk on that, given by Barbara Corcoran, who is she's on Shark Tank, but she's a real estate person. And it's great. It's a short TED Talk. Well, they're all short, but it's, under 18 minutes. And but she said her most successful salespeople were the ones who could just bounce back. They weren't taking it personally.
Right.
And that reminds me of a great little book, The 4 Agreements, by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's just little, and it's just 4 different agreements, and one of them is not to take anything personally. And it sounds so simple, but it's so hard to do. But it reminds us, it's like the world's happening and things are happening, and for us to not take things too personally, because that slows us down. When we do that, then we're hurt, and it takes us more time to be resilient from those, the day-to-day, the loss of the client, the loss of the sale, the loss from a mistake, loss of money, mismanaged project.
So in my experience, what I've learned that helps with resiliency is collaboration and peers. Because for a stint, I was a sole proprietor, and went from a pretty good sized firm to being a sole proprietor, then to starting my own firm. And one reason why I made that move to start and join this other practice was I needed the support of my peers. And many times, because we're not perfect, something happens. And either I go to my other 3 partners, or they've come to us and we're like, how do we fix this? Oh, this is not that bad. I know you think it's terrible, but it's not. That is what I found is huge. And I think that even works
Community.
in, you know, in what we have a pool, a drafting pool area that
Well,
it,
you set that tone. So
Right.
We understand that, so we understand that we can act the same way with our coworkers,
Mhm.
no matter the level.
Yep.
No,
I
that's
think-
great, that support. As human beings, we are wired to connect, even introverts, right? We're wired to connect, so that if anyone who's ever been on the receiving of that, when you feel like something really big's going on and someone says you know, it's gonna be okay, how amazing that feels, how much better you can feel about that, how important that is to moving forward.
By the way, introverts they just have a different way of doing it,
Right.
of connecting. That's even the most introverted people.
Right, that's
They
a
just have a
good
different
point.
way of dealing with it. That's all.
I think one of the early, I mean, if you, and I've always thought this was positive, if you make a mistake, or you even with a client, if you admit it and you say, raise your, I screwed up,
Yes.
it just flat, you know, the emotions go out of it, and they realize you're gonna take it, and then you step up and take care of it.
Mhm.
You know, regardless of what level you're at.
Yep.
And back to one of the points you made, Kim, earlier, I think our profession, there's a lot of perfectionism, which causes some of this stress, because if Alex is a brand new employee and only been going at it for 3 months, or maybe it feels like 3 years, if that culture is that in that firm is that if you make a mistake, you're gonna be put up on the, you know, hung by your fingernails in the town square, then that's a problem, because at any level, whether it's somebody with 3 years experience or my many years of experience, you're gonna make a mistake. And it's a way to learn and be resilient and take it forward for your benefit and the benefit of your team.
Yeah,
Everybody's gonna
we
learn
were
from it.
talking earlier about how it might be a job hazard. Perfectionism might be a
Be a
job
job, yeah.
hazard in
Great.
any exact profession that has a lot of accuracy and science to it. So to keep that in mind.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's never gonna be perfect.
So I think we have time for one more question. We have about 5 more minutes, so
Got it. We're ready.
we're going to do one more.
Hello from King and King.
Uh-oh.
This talk is about personal development as much as it is professional. How do firms and individuals balance personal and professional development in their careers?
Who would like to take that?
It kind of goes hand in hand in some. Oh God, I can't do that.
Oh,
Can you
want-
do
I
it, Jeff?
can't-
Sir.
Personal and professional.
So the question out there is, how do you balance personal and professional goals
And develop.
and
And
development?
development. Right. So what I was saying is they kind of go together. I mean, honestly, we're more concerned on the professional
Sure,
development.
I can handle the personal side.
But I think if you have a strong office culture and a strong group of people, because I know you guys go out and do your own things from time to time, and where us partners aren't involved, I think that helps from the more personal side, you know. So
Nice.
I think I'll add to that, and I think Jeff touched on it earlier, at least in our office, many of our folks are having these one-on-one conversations to create personal relationships that are not just related to the fact that you work here, that you're a human being, that you have, you know, that we want to get to know each other personally and as well as professionally. So that's kind of a natural way to develop some of those that personal growth and using the people in the firm as coaches and mentors for your not only your professional development, which is obviously what you've chosen as a career, but in your personal life as well. You know, if you have other
I mean, that
things
is true. I mean, I've had conversations
Yeah,
for the
it's
HR
not always
thing.
about- it's not always
It's
about
not
the-
at all
not always
related to
about
the
profession.
business. It's hey, I got this issue, and you know, as much as I can, I help. The one little anecdote I like to say is when I was on my own, I was doing a lot of residential work, which you talked about. And what I've learned was I don't like residential work because what I was more was a marriage counselor and less an architect. And I was just like, there's no way what I'm designing for you is going to fix your problems. All the architecture in the world will not solve your problems. And I wasn't trained for this. So, and that was multiple clients. And that's what I'm like, I got to get out of this residential business because it's not my thing.
And I'm not sure what that individual is, what their definition of personal development is, but the business that we're in is a human business. We're solving people's problems through creative solutions in design. So being able to, if personal development is interpersonal skills, and those types of things, then that should be part of, and it is part of our firm culture. That's part of the training that people are getting. It's the leadership skills. It's the technical is important, but the leadership skills and the interpersonal skills are just as important in our business because we are dealing with people's problems. Maybe not necessarily marriage counseling, but
Hopefully not.
building related or
that
site
was not a
related.
good thing. Yeah.
Well, and on the personal growth side, I would say, and even professional. So these, can go both ways too, because even from my seat and my perspective is, so sometimes I am dealing with someone's professional growth in a coaching situation because maybe I am talking to them about the boundaries and, they're like feel so overworked they need to lose their job, leave their job and get another one. But yet they tell me they answered an email of a client's at 1 a.m. and I'm like, well, they were probably just trying to get it off their mind. They didn't know you were going to respond, right? So it's like that self-management. So that can help them professionally. I had one client actually get a raise, and she did less and got more, but it was more that she needed to be more of a manager, more efficient, and they totally valued what she was doing at her. She didn't need to leave that job. She was just so stressed because, again, we're talking about a lot of burnt out. She was burnt out. On the personal growth side, I think, the world begins at the end of your comfort zone. So to be willing to not just stay in the box, to always be curious, always be seeking, looking to learn. And one thing that inhibits that for people that ends up becoming very stressful is judgment. And I actually do a judgment detox program. And the judgments we have of ourselves and others become very limiting. And so I would say if you can drop judgment or at least put it aside, you can allow yourself to start to explore and grow personally and professionally, because you might be limiting yourself in the judgments you have, or maybe even something as simple as I wouldn't like to do that. Well, your friends ask you to do that. Maybe that's the personal growth side. Be willing to try things. I think is a huge in work and in your personal life.
Well, that's great. Thank you guys for coming out tonight to have this great conversation, and thank you everyone for tuning in. This will be posted to AIA New York State's website, so we really encourage everyone to share it, to really become familiar with this idea and empower yourself, empower your firms, and take charge. And we hope everyone has a great night, and if you're partying, enjoy your parties and safe travels home. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Oh, and one last shout out, we'd also like to thank the College of Fellows from AIA. Without their support, this program tonight is being paid for by a grant that we received from the College of Fellows. Without their continued support in all of the programming that AIA does, we wouldn't be here tonight. So a huge shout out to them as well. So thank you everyone and have a great night.